Hello, and welcome to our Wellness Matters talk this evening. I'm so excited about our topic this evening, Pathways to Positivity, Exploring Wellbeing in Positive Psychology. I'm going to introduce our facilitator in just a moment. My name is Nicole Imgrund, and I'm the owner of Rivers Edge Counseling Center. You may or may not know that the webinar tonight is part of a series of webinars, and we have, I think, over 150 of those webinars on our website now. So you'll be able to see this webinar and lots of other ones with just such a breadth of topics anytime as a resource as well. Speaking about our Wellness Matters series, I just recently put up the titles and descriptions for the winter and spring ones. I want to share a few with you. Oh my goodness, they just look so interesting. I can't wait to hear them. In January, we have one about burnout and compassion fatigue. In February, Shadeen is going to talk to us about navigating grief and mental health during infertility. Robin in March is going to talk about embracing second puberty, perimenopausal mental health considerations. Erin in April is talking about finding my way, an artist's journey exploring mental health through creativity, curiosity, embracing the unknown. And it just goes on and on. We've got self-compassion, about expanding the window of tolerance, unlocking ADHD, lots of great topics to start us off really well in 2025, which is just around the corner. We also just recently posted all of our upcoming programs and workshops. There's many of them, including one that Alyssa is offering called Unlocking Genuine Connections, Building Healthy Relationships for Personal Growth. There's groups about grief. We have one on self-esteem, embodied awareness of personal boundaries, lots of good stuff and openings still. So I hope you'll check them out. Our topic, our talk today is about an hour, but we should have a few minutes at the end, or we'll go over a couple of minutes if you have any questions. And I'll take a look at the comments that you have as well. It is a webinar, so you don't have access to camera or audio, but you can certainly use the chat if you want to make comments as you go, or the Q&A, and we will definitely take a look at them at the end. And without further ado, then, I'm going to introduce Alyssa Caskey, who is our presenter. Alyssa is a registered provisional psychologist, and we are very fortunate to have her on our team at Rivers Edge Counseling. And she sees adults, couples, teens, and children for counseling. In her clinical practice, Alyssa focuses on helping clients build resilience, nurture meaningful connections, and find purpose. She integrates positive psychology into her practice to foster resilience, connection, and purpose in clients. And she has a really strong background, and she'll share more about this in her talk in terms of her background and how it relates to positive psychology. But she did 2 years of research at UBC's Nature Meaning in Life Lab under Dr. Holly Ann Passmore. And she also developed a positive psychology program called Empowering Wellness, designed to make well-being tools accessible to communities. Alyssa firmly believes in the transformative power of therapy to enrich lives at any stage, embracing the principle that while the past cannot be changed, the future is full of possibilities. Alyssa empowers her clients to take proactive steps towards a fulfilling life. To Alyssa, therapy is an empowering journey toward flourishing and deep healing. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Alyssa.
Awesome. Let me just quickly share my screen here. Just going to do a second. Perfect. Can you see my screen, Nicole?
Yeah, we see the whole screen though. We don't really see the presentation as you want it quite yet. We can see just there we go. That's
Yeah.
perfect. We got it.
Okay. Well, Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here, and I'm really excited. Positive psychology is really important to me, and so tonight we are going to explore how positive psychology can impact you and discover some tools and evidence-based insights to enhance resilience, connection, and purpose in your life. So we're going to just start off with, if this will work. There we go. Is it changed on your side or is it frozen?
Um,
There we go.
it's good. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to start off with the land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that the land that we are currently gathering on is, in this session tonight, is going to be conducted on Treaty 6 territory. And we acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and Aboriginals who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. And we want to honor the diverse histories, languages, and cultures of the Indigenous peoples who continue to enrich our communities and whose stewardship of this land is invaluable. So, I'm going to go through a little bit of a scope and boundaries of tonight, some things that are important to clarify for the purpose of tonight's session. That way, we're all aligned. So tonight's session is informative and educational in nature. It's not therapeutic, and the tools shared here are meant for general application. Uh, it's also not going to be suitable for therapeutic or professional psychological advice. It's also not a confidential or therapeutic space. So I just want everyone to be aware that in the event that you do share something, it isn't exactly confidential. So with that also in mind, let's be mindful of the following. So let's maintain appropriate and professional boundaries by focusing on your own personal reflections and experiences. Also respecting the privacy of all other participants by avoiding identifiable or sensitive personal details if you do choose to share. Or if you are going to share those things, just be mindful that it is public. Um, In addition to that, I want to invite everyone to take care of your emotions as needed, step away, or, reflect privately if any content feels overwhelming. And of course, you're more than welcome to reach out to the clinic if you do need further assistance. So, Nicole so graciously introduced me, and thank you so much for that. So, hello, my name is Alyssa. I'm excited to have tonight's session and share with you a big passion of mine, which is um, positive psychology and flourishing. So, I began this journey quite a few years ago, and I bring a blend of academic research and practical experience. During my time at UBC, I worked under Holly-Ann Passamore, who is the founder of the Nature, Meaning, and Life Lab. And the main practical goal was developing an understanding of how nature and meaning in life contribute to our overall well-being. And I also created, as Nicole mentioned, the Empowering Wellness program, which is a free program that delivers, positive psychology tools, information, and strategies to communities. The goal with that was to really bridge what I saw as a lack of accessible tools between research and practical application. So my biggest hope for tonight or today's session is leaving you inspired to take one small step towards a more flourishing or more positive, meaningful life. So, without further ado, welcome. So here's what we'll be exploring tonight. Um, Tonight's session, we're going to be exploring why positive psychology matters in today's world, what the PERMA model is, and what practical examples and unique tools such as awe, micro moments of connection, and we'll also work on tools for flourishing. Um, we will be going through a few different examples of how we can use some of these strategies to transform your daily well-being. And of course, we will also help, by the end of it, at least the goal is for you to have actionable steps of applying the principles that we'll talk about tonight into your everyday life. I just want to take a quick moment for those of you who are attending live. I'm just going to encourage you to set you up for success for this evening. So if you aren't comfortable, maybe get yourself comfortable in a distracted-free space. Have a pen and paper ready for reflections. There is an exercise that would be helpful if you jot it down if you'd like to use it at a later date. And of course, engage in activities and experiences. The goal is for you to be as present in today's session as possible. And so this is your time to focus on personal growth and flourishing. So why positive psychology? For decades, psychology is really focused on diagnosis and treating problems. And while I think that's really important, it's left quite a large gap. And what often gets maybe forgotten is what about those who want more and want to move from, I'm doing fine into flourishing? And so positive psychology really answers that question. And it's part of the fourth wave of psychology. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how it's impacted today's current theme of psychology. But we're really moving beyond the disease model. And so when we're moving away from here's what's wrong with us and moving towards some of the more strength focused, resilience focused, and purpose in our lives, we are able to move out of maybe some of the burnout, the stress, and the overall things that keep us maybe stagnant or not flourishing. And so one of the reasons why I love positive psychology is because it really responds to this modern day challenge of stress and isolation, and specifically burnout. If we really focus on what's not working, if we spend a lot of time looking at the things that maybe are not changeable or that we perceive as not changeable, we tend to come at the world from a place of lack. And that can be a really stressful and difficult place, especially if we're feeling like that's the only option. And so I think our big highlight is that moving from, the fast-paced world filled with stress and uncertainty, the shift could really be more timely and relevant in today's society. And overall, the fourth wave of psychology just really highlights, I think, a big need for today's day-to-day actions. And so I want to go through some highlights of positive psychology. And so it really builds on the word strengths, like resilience, gratitude, and connection. And what I mean by that is, so positive psychology is not that we ignore the bad things in life. By no means is it that. It's that we focus on the things that are our innate strengths, things that we are born with and that we are inherently good at. And we use them to build on our resilience. We focus on practical applications of gratitude, moving towards more cognitive flexibility, more room for acceptance and connection. And so we move away from isolation and we move towards flourishing. In addition to that, positive psychology is scientifically proven to improve mental and emotional well-being. And there's many different ways in which positive psychology has significant scientific evidence for increasing our overall meaning in life, our well-being, including our physical health. And so at, at the gist of it, positive psychology is far more than, let's just focus on what's good today. It's actually really about who we are, what we bring to the table, and how to harvest that and really show it in a way that's in alignment with what we need and our values in life. So I'm going to introduce the PERMA model. Um, and so the PERMA model is the framework for understanding flourishing. So it's pronounced PERMA, but it is an abbreviation for positive emotions, engagement, relationship, meaning, and accomplishment. So positive emotions, sorry, such as gratitude and hope, enhance joy and resilience. And so engagement is totally about being fully absorbed in activities that bring you a sense of flow. And so relationships are really the cornerstone of well-being. We are hardwired, to quote Brene Brown, we are hardwired for closeness and connection. And so as they provide this deep sense of support and meaning in our lives, and so purpose and meaning give life a lot of direction, and accomplishment really celebrates progress, whether big or small. Each pillar offers an opportunity to create a richer, more fulfilling life. And so the PERMA model really encompasses that in these pillars. And so positive emotions. And then I really want to highlight that positive psychology is not, um, you know, toxic positivity or just forcing happiness. And so that's not what we're talking about when I say positive emotions. Rather, think, about cultivating more of a gratitude or optimism in really tough times. And so instead of focusing towards the idea that happiness is maybe something that we have to go out and get, look at happiness as something that we can cultivate within ourselves. Engagement is another big pillar. And so this is about thinking rather. I think a lot of us spend so much time in society and in life just totally disengaged. And I think that's where a lot of, and at least from a positive psychology perspective, this disengagement really leads into a lot of symptoms of depression or isolation or feeling really lonely. And so when we come at life from an engaged perspective, it really changes the game. And so I'm going to invite you to think about the last time you were so immersed in an activity that you totally lost track of time. And that is how we really define flow. It is when we discover it through a meaningful activity that we get really enriched in. And so we'll go into the next pillar here, which is relationships. And I've touched a bit on it, but strong connections aren't just nice. They really are essential for our mental and our physical health. And so when we talk about relationships, they nurture our well-being. In addition to that, they also are a big source of our meaning. And so the next pillar, which is meaning, really highlights that purpose gives us a reason to keep going. And maybe to build off of Viktor Frankl's work, which is, what's our why? What is the purpose in our life? And how does that keep us going, even when things get hard? And I really want to highlight this idea of when things get hard, and to use this when, not to diminish that life struggles exist, but to use it as a tool to combat the struggles that we inevitably face. And so the last one here, the last pillar, which I think is just so important, which is accomplishment. So often do I hear, well, we can't, maybe I don't want to highlight my accomplishments, or what happens if I If I sit in the positive too long, it might go away. And I want to highlight that accomplishments are not just about the big wins. It's not those, really big triumphs of high achievement or, no, it's not specific to a promotion or a medal or a big life stage that we enter. It's really about celebrating those really small victories. And when we get into this practice of recognizing our small accomplishments, we gain a lot of joy from them. And joy, I like to prephrase these two concepts. Happiness is often subjective, and we think about it as, oh, I got to find happiness. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, of positive psychology in general, is that it's not something we go out and find. It's something that we have to cultivate within. And when we cultivate that within us, it can't ever be taken away. And that right there is the piece that builds joy. Joy is a constant. It's something that doesn't change just because we have a difficult situation or we've got a really bad day. Joy is, at the end of the day, I can look back and go, yeah, there were some things in that, not that great. At the same time, there is these things in my life that build meaning. Maybe they're the relationships that I hold really dearly, or maybe it's this really exciting or meaningful activity that I have that I can go engage in and debrief or take a step away from life stresses. And at the same time, we're really cultivating the main pillar of the PERMA model, which is spending more time in positive emotions, not to discredit the negative, but to combat it. And so, with that, I want to take a minute. We are going to look at one of my favorite activities, and I think a really missed or not as often recognized emotion is awe. And so awe and positivity are, and positivity resonance are really important to our overall flourishing. And they're also really easy things for us to do. And so we are going to just sort of take a minute to look at awe, look at how awe inspires us, contributes to our well being, and then we'll go into an exercise. So, what is awe? Awe is a transformative emotion that shifts our perspective and connects us to something much larger than ourselves. And when we experience awe, it evokes this concept of small self. And small self is really important. And I'll get into that in just a second. So, whether we experience awe through nature, art, or even a powerful moment of connection, awe really expands our purpose, our sense of purpose. And positivity resonance really refers to those shared micro moments of connection. Um, like when we share a smile or we share a laugh with someone, or that really, um, those moments that really deepen our relationships. And those are the pieces that are small and maybe we don't spend a lot of time recognizing, but they are really important to improving our well being. And so I know that these are really small, but meaningful interactions, and these can create a really lasting impact on our well-being, but also our health. And so awe is this surprising driver of flourishing. And what I mean by that is it expands perspectives and reduces self-focus. So awe is one of the many emotions that has not just a positive realm to it, but a social realm to it. So when we experience awe, we are actually less selfish, which is really interesting finding. The research really supports that when we, if we're in nature or when we're experiencing art, where it's a shared experience, it's a shared moment, and it really highlights and develops this moment of wonder. And the reason for that is, if you think about the last time that you felt awe, and we'll do an exercise, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But if you think about that, this sense of small self that I mentioned, um, what that does is it creates social connection. And so by fostering this idea that there's something greater in the world than myself, and that is the piece that is special to awe. And that's why I think it's just such a great emotion because it not only inspires us, but it also expands this idea that I'm not alone in the world. There's so much more, and it's so many bigger things than me. Um, and then, of course, these shared micro moments, um, and that when we experience awe, we also have better physical health. There's a lot of research that supports that awe reduces a lot of inflammatory diseases, and it improves our cardiovascular health. Just a fun fact. So now we're going to go into an interactive activity. And so, while we won't be physically going on a walk, this is going to be something that hopefully you get to write down and give it a shot, maybe tomorrow or in the next coming days. So, Awe Walks, or the Awe Walk Challenge, is an opportunity to connect deeply with your surroundings. So during this exercise, I'm going to encourage you to take a moment to observe beauty and the wonder in the world around you. I want you to reflect on what stands out. Perhaps it's the sound of the wind, maybe it's textures of a tree, or the colors of the sky. Notice how these moments make you feel and consider jotting them down. I always, I when I give this even in therapy, when I give this as an activity for people to do, I always say, it's really helpful if you jot down your thoughts afterwards because it gives you something to reflect back on. And it's a really simple practice. And so maybe, it's not something that has to be really big. It can be really small. We can, maybe you have a dog or a cat, or, you're going outside for something. If you're leaving the house or you're walking into the building at work, you don't have to go out and search for nature per se. You can add nature into your day-to-day life. And by doing so, you gain the positive benefits of two things. One is awe, and the second one is connecting yourself with a big realm of positive psychology, which is nature and the sense of connection to the world and to the greater sense of belonging in general. And so there's also another way of doing this exercise for those of you who maybe don't want to go outside or can't go outside. You can imagine it. We can also look at photos. And so if we just imagine, if we take 5 minutes right now to kind of close your eyes and picture a walk that you've taken recently, what caught your attention? Was there a sound that caught your attention? And, it's snowing right, or snowed recently. So, is it the sound of snow on the ground as that crunchy noise as we walk? Maybe it's the wind, but maybe it's the sight of something unique, something that also sparks the concept of resilience. Maybe we see a tree that's half dead and half alive, or we see um, nature making its everlasting impression by growing a new tree in an area where maybe we're questioning how. And so when we see that, or maybe it's the warmth of the sun on a really cold day, reflecting on that moment, of what that moment made you feel. What did you notice? What surprised you? And I want to highlight, if we're looking for awe, we're looking for that surprise. We're looking for that element of, wow, that's big, that's impactful. And again, it's a really simple exercise that can bring you mindfulness and a lot of gratitude in your daily routine. And it also it's really great at combating stress. And another piece of awe in itself is this exercise can be done, like I mentioned, with photos. And so, for those of you who are like stuck in an office or don't have a window or can't see anything outside, if you take 5 minutes on your lunch break and you look at photos of something that evokes awe, it doesn't have to be an awe walk. It can be pictures of nature, but it can also be pictures of art or music that really inspires you, or something really vast like the ocean or skies or stars. When we spend time sitting and looking at these things, even if we're not physically outside doing them or in a museum looking at it, uh, we can evoke that same sense of wonder. And that can also induce all of these positive experiences and really help combat stress. And so it's a simple activity, but it can be really beneficial, especially if you're stressed about something or you're feeling really disconnected. So, talk about the science of resilience. So, resilience in itself, I think it's a big word and I think it's used a lot. And I think it comes with a couple different notions. Oftentimes I hear, well, I want to be more resilient, or what is resilience? And resilience is not that we don't let anything affect us ever. Resilience is not that, you know, we're that individual who, life just sort of rolls all everything off their back. Nothing is bothersome. When I want to use the word resilience, I want you to think about thriving in the face of adversity, not the lack of adversity. Because adversity is a part of the human experience. We all experience it to some degree, and so resilience is the concept that despite challenges, we can thrive. And so anti-fragility shows how stress can make us stronger, and how stuff like post-traumatic growth really highlights the meaning and strength that arises from adversity. So, you know, with with that comes maybe the question of, is resilience more than bouncing back? And so it is. It really is. It's about bouncing forward. So when life throws us a curveball, there's a part of us, I think, that tends to get focused on the curveball rather than maybe bouncing the curveball or moving to the side. And positive psychology um, is just that. And when we use some of these tools, we can bounce forward, so to speak. So think of the word resilience kind of like a trampoline. You know, it's about using challenges as like a springboard for growth. So just because we face something that's really difficult doesn't mean that we're not worthy of flourishing or that we can't flourish. And a big part of post-traumatic growth is this idea of discovering meaning and strength after hardship. It's about, how do I take something that's maybe not so great, that maybe is quite difficult or um, quite unfortunate, and turn it into a meaningful or corrective experience for me to either facilitate more personal growth. Maybe I use it as, a checking point. Oftentimes we forget that, hey, I've been through something really tough. and I got through it. And that in itself is a huge triumph. It's a huge achievement. But maybe it also poses the option that we can reflect back on that and go, this situation that I'm in right now is also difficult. But if we can reflect back and say, I've also gone through other difficult things, and maybe that's more difficult than the situation, sorry, that we're in right now, it really reframes our mindset and pushes us more towards optimism. And so, anti fragility really is this growth through stress and challenges. It is that we utilize the difficult aspect of stress. And again, we kind of use it as a springboard and find ways of connecting, again, going back into that PERMA model of connecting with the um, the positive emotions that we can rely on, the um, the emotional connections that we make with the people in our lives. We can utilize these pieces to really grow. Um, and when we use these experiences and challenges as springboards, um, we actually become a lot stronger. And we come at the world from this perspective of rather than lacking or, there's a lot of struggle, and I come with my bag of struggle. We come at life with, there's this concept that, stress is occurring, but stress doesn't have to mean a negative thing. We can reframe it. We can use these challenges to really support our own emotional growth or personal growth. And that actually strengthens us. I want to give an example of anti-fragility because I think when I say, we can really grow through stress and that we can actually get stronger by experiencing stress, people often give me that face of, are you sure? And so, for example, I want you to think about an exercise, or how exercise, I guess, in general, really tears our muscles, right? So if we do something in repetition, if we're building muscle, the process of building muscle is we kind of have these fibers, muscular fibers on our body are striated, and so they look like this. And so as we build muscle, they rip apart and then they come back. And so every time they rip apart, the growth piece of building muscle is that the muscle never comes back to how it was. It always continues to grow, it continues to separate. And that's kind of the same with stress. It shows us that we can tear muscles, we can tear, our bandwidth for what we think is really stressful, and it can be rebuilt, it can be expanded on, and we can develop a threshold or a tolerance that says, this is difficult. At the same time, I'm making a collective choice to do the following, knowing what I know about stress, knowing what I know about thriving and about facing adversity as a springboard or as a tool rather than something that keeps me small or keeps me bungled down. And so similarly, post-traumatic growth shows us um, that, the really hard moments can really lead to a lot of meaning and strength. And I mentioned Viktor Frankl's work, and I want to go back to that because if you've ever read or heard of his work, he really highlights this idea that the meaning of life from his perspective or for his work lens um, is that we find meaning in suffering, that we come up with our concept of our why, of our purpose in life, not in the absence of difficulty, but that difficulty arises and who we are, how we persevere, the strategies and the tools and the things that we utilize to bounce back, and to bounce forward out of struggle or out of um, staying small and towards flourishing is what creates meaning in life. And so, what's the practical step of the science of resilience, of the science of stress? And the practical tip that I want to share is really reframing setbacks as opportunities. Because as soon as we see the world from a curious perspective, when we get a curveball and we get really curious about it, when we look at it as, maybe we take that third party or removed lens and we look at life from a really curious or wondering perspective, we get the opportunity to learn something, to lean on our support networks, or we get the opportunity to build better relationships or more impactful relationships. At the same time, we also get the opportunity to reframe something so it's not as personal. And that's one of my favorite things about positive psychology is if we look at ourselves as these really able bodies, these people who have innate positive strengths, things that we are born with, that we are just fundamentally great at, then we have a lot of hope. We have a lot of power when it comes to a setback. And again, that really is the mindset of sort of getting on the trampoline and bouncing forward, bouncing away from the idea that stress or adversity is sort of it all end all. And again, another practical tip is building supportive networks. And what I mean by that is when we face life's challenges, um, if I go back to the PERMA model, go back to this idea that we're hardwired for connection as human beings. Um, it really shows that oftentimes, when we are feeling really disconnected, if we utilize the PERMA model, if we utilize some of these strategies or pillars, we actually recognize that, okay, there is supportive networks that I'm either involved in or I'm able to reach out to. And if not, then, oh, there's a great place for us to explore, for us to develop. And so that again is just coming at the world of a place of abundance that we can always build more off of, rather than coming from this idea that we don't have. And that's the idea of lacking. And so, practical tools for flourishing. So, I've listed 6 of these, and we'll go into them in a little bit of detail. And so, these aren't the only tools that we can use for flourishing, but they definitely are some really um, helpful things to do, helpful activities that are not big commitments. And oftentimes, with Christmas and so much going on right around the corner, um, these are easy things that we can utilize if the holidays are stressful or if life in general is more stressful at certain times for us. They're really small things for us to focus on. So we're going to start with savoring, and let's dive into some of these practical tools. So savoring future successes. So the power of our mind is so impressive. We can really create a lot within our own mental space, within our own mental imagery. And so if we close our eyes, and we imagine um, a future success, if we picture maybe how something can go right, or if we can picture how something can go well, we can really gain a lot of knowledge from that. So we that does a couple things. One of them is it helps us break down what was it about that moment where we visualize this idea of, future success. What created the success for me? What was I feeling in that moment? What was I noticing about the situation or the surroundings? What did it look like? What did it say about me, about what I'm doing? And so when we utilize that tool, it's often really, really helpful if we're stressed about something that's in the future, or if we're stressed about something that we feel maybe we don't have a great grasp on. And if we're worried about it in the future and we're having that, anxious or anxiety or similar to anxiety like response, then savoring this future success, kind of like really taking a mindful moment to explore what food tastes like. It brings us back to the present and it highlights the things that we can learn and the things that we can gain control over. Another visualization tool um, is gratitude, visualizing gratitude. And I want to highlight what gratitude is not, because I often we often hear that gratitude is, we got to be really thankful for all these things in our life, like everything that gets thrown at us. We got to be grateful for it. Um, and that's really not the case. We don't go outside and go, I have a flat tire. I am just so grateful for that flat tire. That's not gratitude and that's not going to be effective. And research actually supports this idea that when we do that, it makes gratitude less helpful to us, but it also makes us quite irritated at the idea of gratitude. And so, what gratitude really is, by definition, is genuine thankfulness for a handful of things in life. And I go back to the PERMA model, and I know that I go back multiple times this evening, but if we pick, one of those pillars as a great opportunity to explore gratitude, then that's a moment where we have genuine thankfulness. And so maybe it's a relationship we have in our life. Maybe it's the support of someone in our life or something in our life. Maybe it is an experience that we had, an achievement. Again, as people, we don't have an endless book of them, of these really genuine moments that we can rely on, and we build that over time. But to begin with, I think a great place to start is, visualizing gratitude for goals that you've achieved. So think of feeling gratitude for something that you've already achieved, or maybe you're going to achieve. And, when you do that, it really helps us stay motivated. It helps us see the things that maybe tend to get in the way for us, but at the same time, it also really highlights that, yeah, like we can do this. We've already achieved this. There's motivation and there's evidence for us to rely on. And another thing we can use gratitude for is combating those stressful moments by reminding ourselves of the handful of things that we are genuinely grateful for. I'm a huge fan of joy journaling. So, opposed to gratitude journaling, which can often get really unproductive, or research says that if we do a lot of journaling and gratitude, it loses its meaning. But joy journaling, micro joy journaling specifically, is really cool. So when we start noticing and recording the really small moments of happiness or joy, and when I say happiness, again, thinking of the happiness that we cultivate from within, we kind of develop a booklet, or whether it's a spreadsheet or not, but we come up with this set of experiences um, that we can reflect on as an always an endless sort of reliance journal to go back to when things get tough. Another one is capturing unexpected moments of happiness in real time. Photos. Photos are fantastic. And when we look back on photos of us having positive moments or positive experiences, we re-evoke those same emotions. And so if you're ever having a really bad day, if the reason that people find relief in maybe watching a funny video or looking at happy photos or whatnot, is because there's a lot of research that shows our brain goes right back into that moment, and it alleviates the physical and mental pain of whatever stressful situation or difficult challenge that we're in. Of course, we've gone through our walks. Take a short walk, seek something out that inspires wonder in you. Connecting yourself with the present, then that really helps reduce stress. And then, of course, the last one here that I'm going to mention is seeking wonder in your everyday environment. If we come at life with a really, again, that curious, wonder-seeking mindset, we really begin to prime our brain. We begin to have our brain start to look for the positive things in life. And that helps us really reframe or learn to bounce forward the more we practice it. And so it also works as a stress reducer. So last but not least, we're going to head into our conclusion, and as we wrap up, I really want to leave you with this. We'll go through some key takeaways, which is flourishing is not a one-time achievement. It is a journey of small and consistent steps. If we saw flourishing as, just achieve it and then what, that really puts us back into the boat of like the second and first and second waves of psychology. And that's, I think, the most amazing thing about the fourth wave of psychology, this positive realm that says we are ever evolving beings. Our journey does not end with one thing or another. It is always constantly evolving. And so when we make these consistent small steps, we really embark and we really enhance our own levels of flourishing. I invite you to embrace awe, embrace gratitude, and connection with something in your life daily. And my call to action, or something that I hope you choose from today or take away from today, is choose one tool, whether it's practicing gratitude, taking an awe walk, finding a moment of connection, um, and maybe commit to it just for this week, and see how that impacts you. Reflecting is such a beautiful piece of positive psychology because it really highlights, our growth and how much we have grown, and where we get to continue to grow, which is the never-ending goal of flourishing. And, again, I want to remind you that every step you take brings us closer to thriving. Even when, we feel like maybe today wasn't a great day or it was a little bit difficult, that doesn't necessarily mean that we weren't taking a step forward. There's always something we can reflect on that we did well, that, our strengths shine through. And I really invite you to consider that, to think about that, the next time you're, maybe headed to bed or sitting on the couch, or about to take some time to yourself, that's also a big piece of our own mental well-being, is reflecting on what's going well and what we do well innately. So as we wrap up, I'm gonna move on to questions and reflections. And so I've come up with a few questions for everyone tonight, and then of course we'll open up the floor. to anyone who has comments in the chat. But I really want to take this time to, encourage you to reflect on the material that we covered. And perhaps it was a lot. There's a lot of information in that. And so maybe, if you don't want to reflect now or you want to reflect later, that's okay too. But I would love to hear, what concept really resonated with you from today. Um, is there one small step that you feel is achievable or is manageable to take through this week that you can start this journey for yourself? Um, and of course, how might you apply these tools to your personal and or professional life? Positive psychology actually has a lot of impact in the workplace, in our families, in our pretty much every type of relationship that we can possibly think of. There is room to insert positive psychology. And so I invite you to really reflect or to consider where some of these tools that we discussed tonight might be beneficial or might be um, maybe usable in those situations. Yeah. And so I'll invite you to feel free to reflect. I'll give you guys a couple minutes, and feel free to ask any structured questions about the material or positive psychology.
Thank you for that presentation, Alyssa. That was amazing. Yeah, and we'll just give, those are great questions. We'll give people a chance to respond. We have a comment in the chat. I appreciate this positive perspective. I feel it is similar to using neurodivergent terminology instead of autism spectrum terminology. How do you say things that make such a difference to how positive you are able to think of things and reflect on them? How you say things. Yeah,
Oh, yes, yeah.
the difference.
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. The way
Someone, oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
that, um the way we view the world, the way we view encounters, interactions really does have a huge impact on not only how we see things, but also how we feel about those situations. And so yeah, you're right. Like if we use that, if we use this tool to really reframe, we get a lot of bandwidth. Sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
Mhm. Oh, well, there's another comment. Someone is saying powerful tools to put into practice. This week, I will take all moments when my anxiety seems unmanageable. Connection and gratitude will also be adding to my toolbox. Thanks, Alyssa. Powerful tools for sure.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy.
Any other questions or comments? It looks like maybe not. People are starting to sign off. I really want to thank everyone for coming this evening, spending this time with us. And we really hope we'll see you at a future webinar.